Hey everyone, welcome back to Mindful Morsels. Today we are going to have a special guest. Her name is Iris, and she is going to be talking about her latest Substack post, which is all about how to approach the new year of 2025, even though we're more than a month in. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mindful Morsels, helping you do more with less. I'm Sam, as always, and today I have a very special guest with me. Iris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Iris. I grew up in Seattle, and then I went to Georgetown with Sam. I was in the econ major, and then now I'm back in DC for my full-time job.
Awesome. And today, as 2025 continues to roll onwards in January, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about not exactly how to make the most out of 2025, but just how to make enough. Maybe to start with a few feasible goals instead of the classic resolutions we're probably all aware of. And to do that, we're gonna take two approaches to it, where first we're going to talk about Iris's Substack that she has, which is a writing platform that a lot of writers use to write, obviously, and Iris has a Substack called Midday Musings. Go check it out. And we're going to talk about my latest Notion template, which is about tracking your inspirations, which is a slightly scary title, but it's very benign, I promise. And then we'll end with a fun little what's in and what is out segment for 2025. Okay, Iris, let's get into it. So why Midday Musings? Why Substack? Tell us how everything started.
Yeah, so actually I started writing like a newsletter on WordPress originally in high school, but then one of my friend's sisters actually works as a product manager at Substack, so then I kind of started using the platform and then convinced to move over.
Okay.
And I've been posting somewhat regularly since like early on in college, but I kind of just wanted to document my own like coming of age story and just like my thoughts, because I've always been writing, and I also have this tendency to just share everything online, which is not the best, but I think I'm finding a balance between like sharing enough but also keeping things private somewhat, and I find that it's just like really therapeutic and good way to connect with others.
Yeah, and for people who might not know, can you explain what WordPress is and what the major differences are between WordPress and Substack?
Yeah, so WordPress is like this blogging platform where kind of you write and you publish, but it doesn't necessarily get emailed to a reader. But I liked Substack, where it's a newsletter platform where people can subscribe to your blog or your platform. You can also record podcasts on it, as you know, and then
I'm familiar.
Yeah. So I found that it's like a lot more intimate, and it allowed like my friends to just sign up by entering their email, and they get it straight delivered to their inbox. So I really enjoy Substack.
Yeah, and to quote you directly in terms of how you categorize your midday musings, you say that the goal is to learn relentlessly, grow endlessly, reflections on personal growth, creative expression, urbanism, and interesting concepts. So how did that happen? How did all of those things come together?
Yeah, I feel like for me, my interests have always kind of shifted around. Like when I was younger, I was really into politics, and then later on I was more interested in like econ and business stuff. And then I was like, wait, I think I just kind of like to write whatever I want to write about, and I don't want to put it in one box. So these are the various categories that I've like touched on in the past. It might change in the future, but I feel like a consistent thread is kind of just like always learning and putting my thoughts out into the world, and hoping that someone can also either learn from it or contribute to their own thoughts.
Yeah, and for you, like, what have been the most interesting concepts you have written about so far?
I actually really like comparing cities. So, like in 2024, since I graduated early, I traveled around a bunch, like all over East Asia, and then I went back to New York, and then I compare that to obviously like Seattle and DC. And it's very interesting just to analyze like what about a city makes it a good city, and then like what does it mean to live in a city versus being a resident versus being a visitor there. And I kind of just love also visiting other people in their cities.
Yeah, what's been the favorite city of the moment that you've seen in the past, let's say, year?
Okay, I really love Hong Kong.
Okay.
Only in the wintertime. I've never been in the summer, but I think it's basically like New York except more cosmopolitan. And yeah, I love Hong Kong so much.
Yeah, like food-wise, I'm sure it's pretty up there.
Yeah, food-wise is great. They also have like really good weather when it's the winter time, not in summer. And then also like, I don't know, just running along the river is kind of like the West Side Highway a little bit, but it's just like spectacular.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. I've only gone through Hong Kong for like layovers, so I'll have to.
Oh yeah, you need to
get out the airport.
Yeah.
At some point. So let's talk about 2025. Your latest Substack post was in 2025. I want to be moved. So walk us through a bit how that very specific statement came to be.
Yeah, I feel like 2024 was a pretty big year of transformation for me. But at the same time, like since I graduated in December 2023, I was like, not surrounded by people all the time, not on a college campus. And I felt like there's less opportunity for you to feel emotions when you're just not around people all the time. It was a lot more alone time, also a lot more family time. And so I felt kind of like stagnant for a little while. And just kind of like, feeling meh about the world. But there were a few moments where I felt really like, wow, like I'm feeling an emotion right now. And I was kind of capturing down what those moments were. And I was thinking like, hey, I think I can integrate this feeling more into my life in 2025. And so I was trying to think about ways that I could integrate that. And those kind of became my like resolutions in a sense. I feel like they're not super concrete, like I must achieve them, but just habits that I can incorporate more of.
Yeah, and before we get into like what those habits are, would you say that is a contrast to maybe how you approached resolutions in the past where you did feel like you had to achieve them, and if you hadn't achieved them by the end of the year, like it was somewhat of a loss or failure?
So actually I feel like I never really had super strong resolutions. Although I did have like certain goals maybe in the beginning of like an academic semester, I never really set anything for like a calendar year, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because like I thought of time in terms of semesters, not really in terms of like, a year. And so I was thinking of like a way to, I guess, incorporate goals in a year, but at the same time make it like also function with the sort of academic mindset of like semester system. So a few years ago, I was like, actually, I'm gonna think of an emotion that I want to feel in a specific calendar year as opposed to a concrete goal. And so it started maybe in like 2022 when I was like, hey, I want to orient more towards like emotional goals.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I know we had also talked about having like a word for the year, and when we discussed it, it was intention. So talk about why you think it's important to have like a word for the year, and then why intention specifically.
Yeah, so I think also like, when you ask someone about like resolutions, oftentimes it can be, as I said, like pretty daunting. And so I think of it more of like a theme that I want to try to incorporate. And so the recent intention came up is because like I'm an avid runner. And when I was in Hawaii, I was like running and hiking a lot. And then at a certain point, like my legs gave in. And so I was like, I need to do some yoga. I'd never really done a lot of yoga before, but in the yoga class, like at the start of every class, you have to set an intention. And I was like, wait, I like this, very slow, intentional pacing. And I think that's going to be my 2025 because it's sort of the first time where I'm going to be in one city for like a really long, the entire year, as opposed to moving around a lot or like transitioning a bunch. And so it's all about like how I can plant roots and be a lot more thoughtful about how I spend my time, who I spend my time with, and what I do.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. You write in the piece that, quote, I'm a logic-driven, structured person, setting timelines of all shapes and sizes, but the end of the year reflection is where I let my gut and those messy, gushy heartstrings guide my answers. Again, sorry for the close analysis of your words.
Yes.
But yeah, to say a bit more about that, because I think so far we have talked about like emotional goals, what they look like, feelings guiding you. You literally said you wanted to be moved in this year. Yet you identify yourself as more logic driven and structured, probably on a day-to-day. So how do you balance like the logic and emotions for you personally?
That's a really great question, and I think that I'm still figuring out that answer.
Of course.
I'd say that, like, yeah, as you sort of noticed on my day-to-day, I tend to be a very routine person. Like, I wake up at the same time every day.
Which is
6 a.m. around there.
Wow.
And then I like work out almost every day. I try to eat relatively at the same time every day, eat almost the same thing every day too. But at the same time, when I think about like the longer horizon, like, I think about what did I actually enjoy doing, and that was like spending time with people. And as I reflect over the course of a year, I think that's when I'm like zoom out and I'm like, oh my god, these are the moments where I feel that I was really happy, or I was like smiling a lot. Even looking back at my camera roll, I'm like, when was I most happy? It was when I was spending a lot of time with other people, maybe not necessarily doing a lot of structured things, but that's what really keeps like in my memory. And I think it's hard to balance both, but at the same time, I think like that's a struggle that everyone has to deal with, especially once they've graduated.
For sure. And I could see the way that your thought process around like the people who are impacting you led to later in the piece where you're talking about like what your 2025 themes are by looking back at 2024.
Yeah.
You structure it in a way where first you list the 5 people you're most grateful for, and I'm sure all your friends who didn't make the list were feeling some type of way, jokingly of course. You also talked about, secondly, like what you wanted more of in 2025, and then third, what you wanted to do / wanted to experience. So walk me through a bit why those 3 categories and how you were able to answer those for yourselves. Because you almost list them as prompts, like, especially if the latter 2, you're like, what do you want more out of? Like, it was clear that you were thinking about this as if it was just an abstract question and you were putting your own thoughts under each one.
Yeah, so actually, at the end of the year, which I started in like 2021, there's this like list of questions that I always ask myself, and those are some of the questions that like that were covered, which is like who are you most grateful for, like what do you want out of the next year, etc. And I think gratitude is something really important for me. Like, I'm a big words of affirmation person, and I think like, you know, you kind of are the 5 people you surround yourself with, as cheesy as that sounds. And so I always think about like myself in terms of like the people that I am really grateful for and who I kind of want to embody. So that's like always the most important question that I ask. And then like zooming out into the next year, I think, you know, I thought it was like a good idea to say, not necessarily to say like, this is what I want to change, but rather this is what I want to add. Like, this is something that I'm doing and I want more of. Because then it isn't as like, oh, right now I'm in like a really crappy position, but like maybe I'm already beginning to do those things and you just want to add more of it. And I think that's like a kind of a nice way to put it. So that's how I structure my thinking.
Yeah, and I like the consistency that you mentioned, like end of 2021, these have been questions each year, which naturally leads you to ask, have there been any questions that have become like less relevant since 2021 out of that list that you don't think about as much right now or are not as helpful?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really great question actually. I think one question is kind of like, who do you want to surround yourself less with?
Sure.
Which is, yeah, I think like when you're surrounded by people all the time, especially in college, that's like more relevant. Whereas now I feel like I've already chosen a certain like career path or already settled with certain friends that I really enjoy surrounding myself with. And so it's less of like, who can I exclude? Like, I'm not trying to exclude anyone right now. Rather trying to like incorporate people more, or maybe thinking of like ways to integrate people more into my life. So I'm still definitely like a quality over quantity person, but I think now it's less like negative, but more just like adding more.
For sure. I'm curious, like, as somebody who clearly values their friends a lot, like, when's the last time a friend has like surprised you with how good of a friend they've been? Because I think we all have had those very pleasant moments where we're like, wow, like, this person literally didn't have to do this for me, but like is doing it and it's really helping my life. Like, when's the last time that's happened for you?
Yeah, I feel like so I am really grateful for my friends who like maybe their families live in DC, because I never really go home for the holidays. For Christmas, yes, but for Thanksgiving, I've always stayed like on campus or something like that. And this year I didn't go home for Thanksgiving because, as I said, like, I'm from Seattle and it's kind of far and expensive.
It's pretty far.
Yeah, it is far. And so I'm really lucky that two of my friends invited me to celebrate like Thanksgiving and or dinner like over that weekend with their family, and so that's something that I actually didn't really have at Georgetown, but I did get to experience that like this year, and also I think like it's really beautiful to have those kinds of friends who make you feel like they're like a family member.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really nice because I think especially for a lot of our peers during college who were like from the West Coast or international as well, like that's always a question of do I go back for Thanksgiving, especially because it's so close to the holidays.
Yeah.
And that's really cool that you were able to do that. And I'm sure like home cooked meals are very
yeah.
high quality.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was very nice as well.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta eat like a very traditional Chinese meal, which you can't get in DC, so
you can't get good ones in DC.
Yeah.
At least for now. Hopefully that's changing.
Hopefully.
Right. So thinking about like that piece as a whole, as well as just your thoughts on 2025, what would you say to people who maybe have already asked you just how to not set like sky high resolutions or ones that feel daunting, but maybe especially when you're in the grind of like school, like you feel like you have to for whatever reason, like what are you saying, what would you say to kind of give your opinion perspective to maybe make those 2025 thoughts more achievable?
Yeah. So I think first, like reflecting on the year, thinking about what are moments that you felt really awesome, and then think about like what exactly is that feeling that you're trying to like attain, and then thinking about like what was the specific context in which you were feeling those emotions, and then how can I integrate that more into the next year. So as I said, being like more emotion driven, it's a lot more of a soft approach, and then I think like at the end of the day, the point of New Year's resolutions is to make you feel a certain way once you achieve those results. And so what if you like don't necessarily have to get the quote unquote like result, or like I think for instance being healthy and like I don't know eating like a certain diet or whatever, at the end of the day it's to make you feel like better. And so what if you can feel better but not have to adhere to such like a strict standard, then I think like you can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and again, just following up on that, like you have, I would say, like pretty healthy life, just based on what I know about myself and other people in our year. So when you don't like wake up at the time you want, or maybe you wanted to go on a run and you didn't, like how does that work in your life? Like you just talked really well about like the emotions around doing things that make you feel good, but for you, like how much is that derived from like the structure of it versus what you just described in the emotion space?
Yeah, I think like on the day-to-day, usually when I'm like doing like following my routine, I feel pretty good. But at the same time, you know, when I also feel really awesome when like I'm surrounded by people that I really like.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't have to be awake and like running, and I can get that emotion when I'm just hanging out with my friends. And so then in those cases, like, yeah, I don't really have to be awake and like running, but also finding people who also kind of live a similar lifestyle. So like, as funny as it sounds, I think that like at like my workplace, I'm really lucky that I found people who they peer pressure me into going on runs instead of like drinking or something like that. Because then, you know, we'll wake up at like 6:30 and then go on an 8-mile run before work, and like we already accomplished way more than everyone else did at the start of the day, and it feels awesome.
True. That is true.
So it's like incorporating both.
Wow. How often does that happen?
We're going on one tomorrow, so
okay.
Yeah, like one or two times a week.
Okay, that's really impressive. How big is this group?
It's just the three of us right now.
Okay,
but yeah,
I see. Maybe try to peer pressure more people.
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good balance, because a lot of what we talked about just makes me inevitably think about college, even though we have graduated. I think one of the most often things that I heard and said was like, oh, I need more structure. Like, if only like I was disciplined to this degree. But that's arbitrary. And I feel like it almost created a culture of just like constantly feeling like you needed more structure, versus I think so much of college especially is the spontaneity and having all your friends in like a 2-block radius sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think that's helpful, because just because we've graduated doesn't mean that the habits we've had in college, both good and bad, like just disappear. They're like part of us right now as we navigate post-grad transition. So it's about like, yes, like having structure and finding people that can align enough with that, but also still retaining the spontaneity that just inevitably diminishes a bit when you transition from college to whatever is post-college. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely, because I had the opposite problem where I started off college, like, basically, since we were in COVID, I had my parents' routine, which is very, 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 like, strict. Not strict, but they just do the same thing every day, and they like that.
Sure.
And so, like, when I was a sophomore, I kid you not, I had zero flexibility. I remember, like, one of my friends, we, like, got lunch, and I was like, I have to leave in 30 minutes because I need to go, like, study. And so I was the most routine person out there, and that actually inhibited my social relationships.
Sure.
So I actually had to, like, adjust the other way, where I had to actively incorporate more spontaneity.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, like, kind of coming from the other side,
right.
I recognize the importance of spontaneity as well. So I think right now I like my balance, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, like, definitely it's hard to be that structured in college, especially, so I'm very impressed that you were able to do that. But like you mentioned, there are trade-offs, and I think I'm glad that after college you have more time to, like, figure out that balance versus in college and just not feel like you have that time. Alright guys, so after that riveting conversation, we're going to pivot slightly to talk about how I'm approaching 2025, and I definitely agree that resolutions can be daunting, and I don't think I've made serious resolutions since, like, high school when I was like, and get 5s on the APs, which mostly works, that was good. But I think for me, I was reflecting and thinking about, like, who was inspiring me, not just in the past year, but just in life in general. And I think my general interests, like, fall into 3 buckets for now, where it's, like, tennis, entertainment, and tech. So I specifically focused on those 3 and just thought of a couple of inspirations for myself. And then I was thinking more about, well, it's nice that it's in my head, but I felt like I wanted to articulate it a bit better if, I guess, anybody asked. Also, for interviews sometimes they're like, who are your heroes? And you have to give, like, a pretty organic answer and not stumble over yourself, which has happened. So I figured, since Notion, which is a productivity software that you can use across desktop, tablet, mobile, across iOS and Android, Notion has been a great place for me to just put my thoughts down and create some templates. So my latest template has been tracking your inspirations. And I don't mean it in, like, a stalkery way. Please do not find anybody's address. Do not dox anyone. But more so in the fact that I think for everybody, we are constantly inspired by things, but maybe we're not actively thinking about them. But I think it's worth it around the New Year time to think about who's inspiring you, who's motivating you, who are you looking up to, because otherwise, like, I guess you would think you're, like, the most successful person in the world if you didn't have inspirations. And obviously, like, our most successful people do have inspirations. So for me, in tennis, I was thinking about people like Novak Djokovic, who is from Serbia. He has won the most Grand Slams on the men's side. I've
seen him, actually, like, at the mall in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, he was shopping, or?
I think he was doing some event there, but yeah, I did see him.
Was this the Grove City one?
Yes.
Okay, wow. I did not know that. Okay, so Iris has already met my inspiration. But also Venus Williams, the older sister of Serena Williams, who, because Venus has not had as successful as a career. That's gonna get cut probably. She has not had. She has not had. Yes, why is that so hard? She has not had as successful of a career as Serena, but she kind of paved the way, and I think has been really inspiring to see her continue to play as well. And then entertainment and tech, those are, like, a similar vein of people who have just been inspiring. So I thought I might as well make a Notion template, which you can't see, but it's here, and I'll show Iris. But basically, it's this really simple template where I created these columns of sports, entertainment, tech. This obviously could be modified by whoever duplicates to whatever their categories might be. And within each of the columns, you could see some AI created summary blocks of just facts, and then also I included, like, their wiki links. Obviously, these can be modified as well. I deliberately kept it pretty simple because everyone's inspirations are different. But the point is that there is a place for you to have a visual representation of who is inspiring you, and it's flexible enough where you can make it whatever you want. It's malleable. And again, like, there is a somewhat professional side to it where if you're ever asked and you need to talk about your inspirations, this is also a good area if people ask like anything else that you want to talk about in the interview. Like, this is one of the better topics I would say to talk about. It's helpful. So the Notion template is out. I will have it linked anywhere I can. And my few fans can download it, and I appreciate everybody who has downloaded a template so far. Any thoughts on inspirations in general?
Well, I love that you put Emma Chamberlain there.
Yeah.
She's awesome. I love her podcast. And,
Yes.
like, I just watched an interview with her recently on it. Not an interview, actually. It was, like, a sort of this YouTube channel that recreates, like, a YouTuber's life story.
Oh, in a movie?
Yeah, like in a movie.
Yes, okay.
And Emma Chamberlain was on it, and, like, I love her so much. So.
Yes. No, I love her too. And I meant to do a full podcast episode of like how she's inspired me as a creator. I never got around to it, but like the way she like kind of revolutionized like vlogging, editing, that style, and now she's like has her podcast. It's a fashion icon. Like, a lot of props to her.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Alright guys, we're gonna wrap up with a super fun segment of what is in and what is out for 2025. If anybody watched my previous collaborative episode with Brandon Wu, we did a very similar thing for what's in and what's out for job searching. So now, since this episode is about the upcoming year, or I guess we're in the year, but people know what I mean, we'll talk about that. So for me, I will say things that are in. First, pen and paper. It's a forgotten art. I think anybody above the age of like 25 will agree with me. But I think that a lot of my work in the past 2 years has naturally been on the computer or on an iPad because it's more efficient, and I agree. But there's something I think very psychologically helpful about writing things down on pen and paper, not even like an Apple Pencil and iPad, even though you're making the same motion. And I think it's a way to keep things that are important enough to write down, but not necessarily things that like you need to know exactly when and where to do it, because then you would use better technology. But I think pen and paper should make a comeback. I don't think it's declining, but I think it should make a bigger comeback in our cultural zeitgeist in 2025. And my second in is IPAs, because I think I like how every region has a different kind of IPA, and I was recently in Charleston for the holidays and I was able to try their IPA. I've tried a lot of the different IPAs, not all in one night, here in DC, and I think that versatility of an IPA is something that I also want to see more from myself in 2025. And then what's out, first, tote bags. I think tote bags are a very college thing, and as somebody who like still uses a tote bag now, I'm part of this, but I want to see a decline there, because either like have a backpack or have like, I don't know, like maybe a different, I guess a purse as well, like any sort of bag that isn't just like slung across your shoulder in the way tote bags are. And then secondly, maybe TikTok. Like, I know that the TikTok ban is being debated, and even if ByteDance had to sell TikTok, like it would still exist in some form. But I think the general trend of TikTok, how it is now of the short form videos, like I think it will change. I don't know to what, but I think it will change significantly to a point where it's not as, it'll be something significant that will change. I'm being very abstract because I don't want to make predictions that don't come true. Yeah. But I don't know, I just think it'll be very different from how you've seen it since COVID till now.
Okay,
what about you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm a big fan of pen and paper.
Yes.
And then this is tangentially related, not really, but one in is voice memos. I love voice memos, especially now that like iMessage has incorporated like the transcript feature.
Yes.
So you don't have to like listen to necessarily the entire thing. But I love sending voice memos because I feel like it's so much more authentic, and I can do it while I'm like walking around, and it's great. Another in is tea. I think like tea houses I really enjoy. It's like a lot more relaxing and just like more zen. I'm not the biggest caffeine drinker, so it's great for like an afternoon where I just want to like chill out and get cozy. In terms of outs, okay, this is kind of related to like your IPA thing, but I'm not the biggest fan of fruity cocktails, and so I don't like having to go somewhere and then getting something fruity because I will chug that. I need to be a sipper, and so I think I actively try to order the most kind of disgusting,
like the bitter one,
yeah, like
the
the bitter
dry
ones,
one.
yeah. So goodbye with fruity stuff.
What do you mean by chug? It's like a literal
No, it goes down so fast. So yeah. So therefore, no more fruity stuff for me at least. And then I think that's about it for now.
Yeah. Well, definitely a lot of ins and outs to be determined in 2025.
Yes.
But thank you, Iris, for coming on. This was very, very insightful to me, and I'm sure people who watch this, make sure you check out Iris' Substack, Midday Musings, and anything else that they should be aware of on your side.
I think that's about it.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for having me on here.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the conversation. You can check out Iris on Substack. Her Substack title is Midday Musings. And of course, you can always check out Mindful Morsels on Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. I'm actually closing out this era of Mindful Morsels and moving on to a different podcast, and I will be talking more about that in my next episode, which will be the last one of this era of Mindful Morsels. So stay tuned, like and subscribe.